Hey guys. So, we'll update on Carrie's car since we found out, I guess, 2 weeks ago that he got broken into, and then last week we were still working on it, doing all the insurance stuff, and then I talked about it some last week, and then we found out probably last Wednesday or Thursday. It was originally estimated the damage to be like $850, and our insurance deductible was $500. So I figured, that's $500 down the tube just because some tool can't work to have income. He's got to break into people's cars, and I just kind of voiced my frustration about that last week. And then Carrie got a call from the shop that was working on her car, and they're like, well, hey, we noticed that half of this estimate is for fixing a dent in the door, and it's not even that bad if you want to look at it before we charge you for it and do some work on it. So Carrie's like, all right, cool, just do all this other stuff, fix the window and everything, and then we'll see if this dent's worth $400. So we go pick the car up, man. We look at it before we walk into the shop, into the office of the shop, and I couldn't even find a dent on it. Inside, outside, I ran my hand over the whole thing, dude. Couldn't find a thing. So we walk in there, and they're like, well, we want to do you a solid since you've been coming to us for a while. So we just kind of punched out and buffed it a little bit when we were working on the glass. But it's there, I promise. I don't even see it. So, long story short, man, we ended up only being like $50-$60 out for the whole thing, man. That's like 10 days of a nice rental car, man. For that much, dude, that ain't bad. So, yay! And that, friends, is why I don't need to extort people for money. Because I got God working with me on stuff like that. So, televangelists. Anyway, that being said, I just want to pass that along because I thought that was pretty cool. Beats blowing $500 on something, huh? Man. I don't even really know what's happened this past week other than that. Well, got a dog coming in. But man, something that has that's been on my mind a lot this last week is just, well, basically the crappy state of contemporary Christianity and what we can do about it. I mean, how do we go from here where we start thinking maturity is getting tougher messages from the pulpit on Sundays instead of hearing tough things from God about ourselves, straight from God? Anyway, that's something I've really been thinking about this last week. And I talked some before about this new girl that got hired at work and how her husband works at ORU, so everybody thinks of this super Christian couple. And I keep the cards close to my chest on that one. And I hadn't really gotten much chance to work with her, but I got to spend a little bit of time with her on Saturday, I guess. And man, you ever have God just really break somebody down for you? Like, you can just look at him and then he just starts listing all these things that they're struggling with. And he doesn't do that with everybody for me, but there's some people, man, that just, it's pretty obvious. And one of the big complaints from a lot of people about this girl is that, man, she just works slow. But she's new. She may not just know what she's doing, or blah, whatever. But she's enthusiastic. If you suck at your job, but you're happy. Anyway, you know, she's new. Cut her some slack. But, man, one thing that just really, really, really stood out when I was talking to her was nobody else at work has mentioned it. It's not like we get too deep and too serious at work. It's mostly just a bunch of dudes, so we keep it pretty lighthearted. But she's just carrying around hurt, and it's obvious in her eyes when she smiles. Man, she's got that. It's a big smile, but it's just forced. And then just seeing that got me thinking about when I was I used to help out at this summer camp. And I mean, it was a small little camp, man. We had a lot of fun, but it was nothing huge. And so we went from anywhere like the 5th or 6th grade, I don't know how old the kids are, I don't remember, up through junior high school, like up to 16, 17, 18 years old. And most of the camps were like 3-night, 4-day, or 4-night, 5-day. And we'd spend a lot of time just doing activities to really just focus on pushing these kids to the breaking point and having to strategize and communicate and focus on teamwork and synergy and working together. And so we'd do these activities during the day, and then at night we'd bring it home and talk about God and ministry and give these kids a chance to talk about what they've learned, and then just make it an impact on them. And then, of course, each night gradually we'd bring in more and more ministry, and then usually it was the last night of the camp. Sometimes it was just from day one or evening one, I guess. And man, God would show up and people would just be breaking down. They'd just be bawling and holding each other and just crying for hours and hours. That would be church. And I'll never forget, man, there was a few times each summer I probably helped out that camp 4 or 5 years. I was just talking about, man, God, you've walked on water, help me walk on eggshells. Talking about just these, God would just touch these kids where they were at, man, and a lot of times, too many times, man, probably 5 or 6 times out of 10, there was ministry for molestation from family members, usually from family members. And it took a lot for these kids to get it out in the open. But when God showed up in these meetings, man, there was just that safety, that peace and that comfort that just gives you the fortitude to be able to talk about it, no matter how vulnerable it makes you or them. And the look, oh, well, thought I was going to get the new puppy and make a cameo, but he just walked out. The look in those kids' eyes when they were just starting to struggle with it, you know, when God was trying to pull it out and trying to find the strength in them to really bring it out. That's the same look a lot of people in church have. It's ridiculous. Especially since church is the place these people should be going to get set free. But not only do these victims not know how to even approach the subject, they don't feel safe bringing it up in church. What kind of garbage is that? And it's supposed to be there's supposed to be serenity and peace in church, and not just the building, man, and the people. The people are really what make the building of God. But, you know, we all have stuff we struggle with. Yeah. And some of it we get over. Some of it we just keep pushing under the rug. And we think it's strength to keep going despite these things that are holding us back. Man, despite how awful these things come to haunt us in our sleep, or when we just have these quiet moments, and then it gets hard to spend time with God because we got to get quiet, but then this stuff is just screaming at us. Like these awful visions and stuff from our past just comes up before we ever get a chance to really get a foothold in God's presence. It's strength to just face that stuff, man. It's just smoke and mirrors from the past that the devil's using to just weigh us down. And, come up. Come up. All right. Hey, come on. This, he's still a little small yet. This is the new dog, Truman. Hello. And there he goes. But there he is. We think he's about 10 weeks. Not sure what that is in metric, but I hope you can probably find it online. Anyway, he's a fun little dog. But yeah, a lot of people are just confused about what strength really is, and courage. And courage and strength is facing that stuff with God's help. And a lot of times, early on, we get God's help through other people, through ministers, through more mature Christians, through Christians that have been down that same thing that God has helped them walk through. But more and more as that happens, we start finding out in ourselves, man, these people that come along to mentor us, eventually they just start confirming things to us that God has told us about in secret. And then more and more we can start narrowing in on what God tells us and how God talks and where in our heart and our mind and our soul and our spirit that he talks from. But that ain't a very popular practice. So, all that being said, we're going to take a couple verses grossly out of context, such as Proverbs 23:7. For as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. And Solomon's really not talking about the stuff I've been bringing up. But yeah, you can read a whole chapter 23 to figure it out. Dogs are fighting over a treat again. But, you know, really, well, prevalent throughout the world, but yep, still fighting. Throughout the world and prevalent just in church. Man, we think a lot of our issues are just part of us. Whether it's just being spineless and then we pass it off as meek because that's who's going to inherit the earth. Or whatever else. Man, I don't know what kind of church you guys have all gone to, but some of the sermons that I heard growing up, it stressed humility, but it implied worthlessness. In a Christian sense, of course, because we are nothing before God, or, you know, whatever. And that's not how it works, man. That is not at all how it works. And there's a lot of things that happen to us, man, especially in our formative years, whether it's physically formative, like the first 10, 12, 15 years, or the mentally, emotionally formative. teenage years, especially. Man, when things happen, man, it just shape us. And oftentimes it's bad things. There was I remember there's a couple of really, really close friends that died. The one ended himself. The other one just kind of gave up on life. Gave into the things that were weighing them down. But both of them really, really had a big impact on me. And they transformed the way I perceived things and my outlook on life. And it really, really weighed heavy on me. And that stuff actually chained me down for years. I mean, not decades, but too long. Because I gave them weight in my life, because I thought they were milestones. And they were. But the emotions that I attached to them, because of how they shaped me, that was what was holding me back. And that was keeping me from God. And it's not just people in our lives that die. It's whatever. Man, too many people that I've either talked to or that God's filled me in on, man. There has been a molestation issue. Church needs to be a sanctuary for that kind of thing. Not a place where you go just to be quiet about it and hide your issues from God, the only one that can help you with them. The other verse I was going to take out of context, the passage, was James. We're going to start at James 1:19. So then, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. For the wrath of man doesn't produce the righteousness of God. Good word, I'd say. Therefore, lay aside all filthiness and overflow of wickedness, and receive with meekness the implanted word, which is able to save your souls. But be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. And this is the one we're going to take out of context for teaching's sake. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he's like a man observing his natural face in a mirror, for he observes himself and goes away, and immediately forgets what kind of man he was. But he who looks into the perfect law of liberty and continues in it, and is not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, this one will be blessed in what he does. Giving a little meat to that passage as far as what we're talking about. Natural man looking in the mirror might think he is a gorgeous, ravishing stallion. But if he thought that, he probably wouldn't forget as soon as he walked away from the mirror. People I know that are like that don't seem to forget anyway. But, you spend time with God. You spend time in the Bible. Man, just reading how God is, who God is, what He is, and how He thinks of us. It's kind of hard for us to get down on ourselves. Especially once we really understand, with a biblical perspective, what righteousness and humility really are. It's not about denying the gifts God's given us or the position that He wants us to have in His kingdom. And He wants us to be at the top of our game in this world for Him. And that doesn't mean being broke and blaming it on God because I'm being holy. Man, you know how many businessmen that drive Aston Martins and Bugattis and all these fancy cars don't know God because too many Christians think you have to be poor to be saved. Man, what if one good solid Christian businessman got a fancy car? Man, got a super upscale Cadillac or, whatever, a James Bond car, whatever. That would give a little weight to his testimony and what he says to these other businessmen. Does that mean he worships the car? No. It's a tool that God's given him to reach these people. It's a tool of persuasion. Kind of like a hammer is with a nail. Anyway. We got to get the kind of poverty, false humility, false responsibility, crap thinking out of our head, man, so God can do something with us. So we can't go hear some bang-up message on Sunday, get the receivers out and praise God, and whatever, and just feel all good about ourselves and happy, hooray, God loves us. Disregard all these bad things that were weighing us down for a couple hours during some shouting message. Take a nap and then wake up with these chains just right back around our feet, our hands, our neck, blinding our eyes, covering up our ears. Just because we find out from somebody or straight from God who we are from a Sunday sermon or whatever else, man. Small business, small group meeting, little home meetings, where God just drops on like half dozen people, and then it just changes your life. Man, we can't look back so fondly on that and then keep giving weight to the things that are holding us back. We can't forget the kind of person that God thinks we are. I remember when I was just still really, really baby Christian, man. I learned enough to be able to hear from God, and a lot of the things He was saying, man, was just stuff to build me up. Just so I'd start seeing myself the way He saw me, the way He saw things that were in me that He was trying to build up. Things like patience and perseverance and endurance and tolerance and patience and patience and patience and love and love. And he just kept repeating them and repeating them. And he'd give me a glimpse into the mirror of how He saw me. I'd look at it for a few. I'd write it down, man, just how much He loves me, man. I get that warm, fuzzy feeling inside. And then I'd move on with life. And then I'd go to work and just find another reason to be upset or conspire to get somebody fired because they sucked at their job or, whatever. I was like a natural man looking in a mirror and then forgetting, as soon as he walked away, what he looked like. And that goes, man, any of those emotional issues, man, it's easy to sweep under the rug, but the rug, it doesn't get rid of them. Man, it just hides them. You still see them under the rug, man. You see this big bump underneath the rug. It's still there. But the rug covers it. You don't have to look at how ugly that stuff is. It doesn't have to be like that. We've all got issues, man. It's not strength to make a lifelong habit out of disregarding them. It's not, especially not godly strength. Man, the first couple of years, I think it was especially the first 2 years that I lived here, there was a lot of ministry. And right before I moved down, the pastor, Dave Roberson, was telling everybody, man, as soon as there's a grace line, it's time to get in it. Everybody. And grace is just like God giving you a little spiritual steroids, basically. And So a lot of times, I would jump in those lines. I would catch these people that would fall down. I'm not going to say anything about that because I wanted to, but I caught myself. These people that would fall down when they get prayed for. And then at the end, I'd jump in. And then sometimes Dave would have a word for me. And then there was times, man, it would bring something up, something that was just not good, something that wasn't godly. It would just bring up some the toxins of the soul inside of me. And I'd just start crying and crying. And then, in the tears, man, something's coming out. Something, I don't know how it works. Man, it's like those negative emotions would just come out through the tears. And then after a couple of years, that happened once. And wrapped up, and God's like, well, that's really the last time this sort of thing is going to happen to you. And I said, wait, what? And there's been a couple times where I would just get this epiphany of how much I sucked sometimes still, and how much I was still holding on to something that would weigh me down. And sometimes that would elicit an emotional response, but it wasn't the same as God being able to pull those emotional, soulish toxins out through tears. Sometimes it's just strength to accept it. You're going to cry. Man, if you're trying to get over yourself and get closer to God, there is going to be tears, no matter what. Sometimes that's hard for us masculine folks to really embrace, but when you get a picture of just the amazing, perfect combination of strength and vulnerability that God has, and you start aspiring for that, it gets a lot easier. Man, you look at how far out on a wing God's put himself. And Jesus, man, just look. You read the Gospels, man, the whole crucifixion scene, everything leading up to it. Just for the chance. I think the dog sees a squirrel outside. Just for the chance that we would want to get to know him. That's putting yourself out on a wing, man. That's the equivalent of you or I just investing however much money in somebody's livelihood, hoping that they'll be our friend. Not even trying to buy their friendship, just, it ain't easy to draw a likeness to what Jesus did for us, man. But what's the most important thing to you, and would you risk it for a relationship with somebody? Just for the chance to have a relationship with somebody. God did it for us. That's going pretty vulnerable. So, if we're too proud to cry in front of God about some things that are holding us back from Him, man, we got bigger issues. So let's focus on a mirror that God has for us, because it's Him trying to bring out what He's given us. And it's not about us just loving our neighbors and blah, blah, blah. He's given us all talents and strengths, man, that we're supposed to be using most of the time for a job. Can you imagine Christians having jobs? Shouldn't have said that. But man, that talent and our strengths, God gave them to us, man, for us to embrace and to let Him empower through us so we can use them as a witness for people. Carrie can reach a whole different slew of people for God than I can. Man, she's told me stories about her job and how some people, man, they just suck and they get away with it and they're way overpaid. And, you know, it's like, man, if I was president of that place for a day, dude, there would be some serious turnover. And I've joked about getting a job there in this department or that department. Carrie just looks at me, she's like, I don't think you'd be a good fit there. I don't think you would last very long. Which is true, because they are, they're not as stringent on accountability, I guess you could say, or on results, as my job is. So I can, it's still frowned upon to be quite as intense as I am at my job, just because I don't express it in the most godly way sometimes. But, man, at her job, they are not very intense at all. And, man, it sounds like she is a phenomenal fit there. I don't follow her around at work, so just stories she's told me. And she can reach those people for Jesus. I could not. Man, it would not be a good thing. Just because Carrie's a lot more easygoing about some of that stuff than I am. Some of her strengths, man, mine are not that. So we happen to complement each other very well. But we know that. And then just looking in a mirror, the mirror that God's given us, not the one that's based on our emotions or our past or the things that have defined our perspective of life. The things we look back on that we give emotional weight to. Yeah, they may have shaped our life, but that's not who we are anymore. I spent a long time in Washington State. Growing up there. And a lot of memories. All my family's up there. All my childhood, high school friends are up there. I remember when I moved down here, I had I was so grossly short-sighted. I moved down here, I was like, all right, God, 6 months, man, you're going to get me set up. I'm going to get built up all kinds of ways, man. I'm going to be ready to go turn Washington State upside down. For you, of course. It's only going to take 6 months. I'll be back up there. It's coming up on a decade. And, man, for a long time, several years, I still gave a lot of weight to those memories. And then somebody I used to be real good friends with up there shared this this collage of all these reasons why Washington State's awesome. I was like, well, how can I not read that? You know, I love the place. It was garbage. Man, seeing the things that some of those people think are awesome are an absolute affront to God. Absolute affront. Just looking through that. I mean, this was not long ago either. This was maybe 2 months ago, 2 or 3 months. was just looking through it, and I just kept looking at it. I just kept looking at it. I was like, man, what does that state have going for it now? Besides the beautiful Cascade Mountains and all the lakes and outdoor activities and my family and my friends. But overall, man, that place is not how I remember it. And I spent a week at least just thinking about that collage that I saw. And then I had almost no emotional attachment to Washington State anymore. I'm almost reluctant to go up there now, to be absolutely honest. Just because of what they're moving towards representing as a whole, as an entity, as a state. It is so far from God that sometimes I wonder if I even want to wear my Washington State gear, like Washington State University shirts. And man, do I want people thinking I'm affiliated with that? I've asked myself that lately. And I had so many emotions tied up in that place, and so many memories. Took one collage to put it in perspective, and to realize, you know, the only thing that matters, really, during my tenure here on Earth, ain't where I'm from, even if I can use that as a segue for somebody else to talk about them, and then they ask why I came down here, and then I tell them it's for church, and then they gave me this weird, crazy look and asked if I started a church, and there's about 6 different conversations I've had with different people about why I moved down here. It doesn't matter anymore, unless I can use it to create an avenue for Jesus to sneak in there. Otherwise, it don't matter where I'm from. It doesn't matter that I'm currently in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I don't think we'll be here forever, and then it's not going to matter where we go. That Carrie and I were from Oklahoma. Who cares, man? We're supposed to be from heaven. Either God's real or he's not. The stuff that made us, the stuff that made our soul, is not the same stuff that's made our spirit. And it's pretty evident by how often we, me in particular, not trying to steal the show, just trying to be honest, get weighed down with stuff that just has emotional attachment to it, man. Most of the time, that's just not God. It's not. So, does it really matter what's happened to us in the past? If it's not shaping us towards God, if we're not allowing God to have a presence in those memories, to really, to sift and refine the good out of it, the lessons, the things we can use from that to make a segue to reach other people. And there was Carrie and I stopped at a grocery store near our house, and we had this list of stuff, and then of course there was something on the list we forgot. So it was after we checked out, and I was just standing there, just inside the building at the exit doors, while Carrie ran and picked up something else. And one of the managers at this store, he was just chilling at the front, at the doors, just kind of greeting people as they came in, or thanking people as they left. And since I was just stuck there for a minute anyway, he and I started talking and just chatting, whatever. And found out half of his life story in the 4 minutes that Carrie was gone. He moved here from somewhere like Ohio or somewhere around there, Illinois, to go to Rainbow Bible College, and then that was however many years ago, and then he liked Tulsa so much he ended up just staying and having a family, and then he just got this job and he likes it and blah 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 and goes to this church, and and then Carrie comes through the line, and then we're starting to walk out the door, and I shake his hand, bye, and then Carrie and I are walking out, and I start telling her this whole conversation I had with the guy. And she just looks at me, she's like, how did you get that much information from him in that tiny time span that I was going? You just find segues, man. You just try and smuggle it out into the conversation from our past. I was from Washington State. He was from Ohio, Illinois, someplace like that. We found some common ground. Got to know each other. There is a, man, I just, walking on eggshells, man. There is a serious need for Christians to just be honest about their past, because they can use it to reach people, man. If you've been molested, dude, you can get with God, man. He will make a safe place for you and yourself, for people to come to, for you to minister to. It's as simple as that. The issues that you have had, these big issues, man, God can use them to make a place in your heart for other people. Man, so you can relate to them. You can show them the light at the end of this tunnel of whatever they're struggling with. You can be their godly mirror for a time while they're establishing their feet within Jesus. But maturity starts when it's between you and God, or between me and God, or when it's just a relationship between a person and Jesus. Those people at church, at the home groups, at the Bible studies, man, we're there to complement your unique relationship with Jesus. Not to be a mediator for it or anything else. We're here to complement that. So, kind of wandered all over the board on that one. But, hope it did somebody some good. Anyway, love you guys. See you next week.